Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Bits episode. In this episode, I want to talk about a new trend in charging ports that's happening in our market right here. You see, the US is going through a transition going from CCS1, which is sort of the circle on top, 2 DC pin charging port, to NACS, which is the North American charging standard. Sort of self-proclaimed by Tesla, but since they're the big dogs in the group, and they honestly did have the better connector, the industry is switching to NACS. And we're sort of in this transition period in the North American market between cars that have adopted the new charging port and cars that have yet not adapted the charging port. And then we have cars that are kind of doing a mix of both. And there's a few vehicles that have launched in our market with, I think, a pretty bad implementation of the charging standards. And I want to make a PSA video saying, if you're an automaker, please don't do this. And I'm going to use the new Porsche Cayenne as an example because while it's a fantastic car, and this is the Turbo, which is the insanely fast one, you can check out our out-of-spec testing videos on this. It really, I think, is going to confuse people. Let me tell you what the heck is going on here. Here we have a pretty nice Porsche Cayenne Turbo electric. You can get these cars all the way from about 100 grand to 250 grand. This one's 197, so a pretty lightly spec'd turbo. It's an absolute monster of a vehicle. You can go full road trip spec with the new Cayenne with 400 kilowatt charging and great range, and we have all the videos showcasing that. And then you can go to this one, which has the big Pirelli P0Rs on it, 325s in the back. I mean, look at the size of those tires under here. This thing is built for performance, but it can also tow 7,700 pounds, which means you can bring your race car to the track, but it'll probably be faster than your race car around the track, which is crazy to think about. In this episode, we're just talking about charging ports, though. And to give you an example of what's going on here, this is the new North American charging standard port. And I say new, I mean, the shape has been around forever, but the implementation of this is actually relatively new-ish, last few years. This is technically standardized as J3400. So it's SAE J3400, North American Charging Standard, or the Tesla port. And the Porsche, Mercedes CLA, Nissan Leaf, Mitsubishi Electric that's just coming out, and probably a few others that don't come to mind right now, are using this port in kind of a bad implementation. So a quick history lesson on this port. Back in 2012, when the Tesla Model S launched, Tesla needed a port to charge their vehicles. Their original Roadsters used this kind of proprietary, really interesting connector that only supported AC charging at the time, and they basically were waiting for the whole industry to come to a standardization on a port, and no one could agree, and it was kind of a mess. So Tesla said, look, we've got to engineer a car, we've got to sell an electric car, we're just going to put our own port on the vehicle. And it largely communicated, it's the same Tesla port that's now in this car, shape-wise, but the communication is totally different than modern times. It actually used CAN communication, very similar to CHAdeMO, to enable DC charging, and AC was still pulse width modulation. And that's why the early Tesla cars could actually CHAdeMO charge with an adapter very easily. It spoke the same language through there. Years went by, and sometime around the time of maybe 2021, 2020, somewhere around there, Tesla started to support CCS charging with their vehicles through an adapter and through a different module in the ECU of the charging port itself. That now speaks ISO 15118, and that is the standard of which CCS communication happens on. So if you think of modern NACS as the shape of the Tesla plug with the communication of CCS, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, but that's what brings us to J3400. It's speaking CCS, and it's shaped like the Tesla plug. So hopefully that explains a little bit about what's going on here. But let's talk about some more things to do with how Porsche and Mercedes and Nissan and others have implemented it wrong. So, of course, now with the whole North American market switching over to the NACS port, you would think, well, okay, the cars that support it can support it like Tesla and Rivian and others can, where you can plug an AC charger into here or a DC fast charger into here. And unfortunately, this implementation here means you can only use this port for DC charging. And if I run over to the other side of the Cayenne to AC charge, you actually have to use it on the other side of the vehicle. I first have to wait for that charging port to close, then this one will open. You use the old style J1772 connector. Again, the DC port of this would just have the extra pins on the bottom right here to make it CCS1. The old style here is used for AC charging only. And in the case of this car, this can do 40 amps or 80 amps, depending on configuration. It's a bit of a shame, I think, that you have to tell customers, be a user, where you look at this port, you'll roll up to a hotel, for example, and they have Tesla wall connectors, or really any major, AC charging company now offers NACS. You plug in here, and the car just throws a warning. It says it can't charge. It doesn't say, hey, you've plugged an AC charger into the vehicle. Nissan also sends the wrong message, I believe. There's very little education that's done to the user to say, hey, this is for fast charging only, rather than this, because a lot of people don't know the difference between AC or DC charging. So before I complain to you a little bit more, let me explain why this is becoming a common technical limitation. You see with the J1772 port, that top circle that I showed you over here, that is purely for communications and AC charging. There's separate pins on the bottom, right, that do DC fast charging on the CCS1 configuration. So again, this is just for AC charging. You would have separate pins on the bottom that do DC charging for that port. So you actually need more cabling in the vehicle in order to support AC and DC charging. With the NACS charging port, there's communication lines in there, but the AC and DC charging lines, these two ones right here, those are actually shared between the two, which means you only need one set of connectors heading up there, one set of lines in the vehicle, but you need a separate junction box in the power electronics of the car to actually switch between AC and DC. And it adds complication, and it could really mess some things up if that junction box fails for whatever reason. Cars go through major temperature swings, major crash events that this part cannot fail on. And there's not really a huge supply base available in the broader market now to actually support the new native NACS ports, or at least not when this car was being engineered. A lot of the third-party suppliers that supply this type of equipment to manufacturers now have AC and DC charging solutions for the NACS port. It just was never thought to need to be a thing until the whole market decided to shift. So that's the technical reason as to why this car doesn't have the junction box to support AC and DC charging on NACS, and they have to put a separate J1772 port on the Cayenne. In the case of this vehicle, because it's two different ports, two different locations, I think it would still be totally fine if you could AC and DC charge on the NACS side over here on the driver's side. And then if they left an additional J1772 port over here for folks that want added flexibility, or maybe people who already have a charger at home and it's just we're in that transition time and Porsche's trying to support both, that would be a customer benefit. But the fact is that you have to use the J port for AC and the NACS port for DC makes it ultra confusing. Now, I actually asked Porsche about this and I was like, guys, what do you think? And they're like, well, if you're a new EV driver, let's say you buy a Cayenne as a first time EV, that's pretty easy to explain. Go to any fast charger out there, Iona, Electrify America, whatever, Tesla superchargers, you just plug into this side, and for home charging, you use a different shape. So different shapes, different ports. The real confusion, I think, actually comes from when you are at a friend's house, when you go to a hotel. The car is going to go to so many different places to charge. I'm sure every car will at least one time end up in a place where there's a Tesla wall connector in a parking lot. Someone will go over, plug in, the car is going to show an error. I do think that the cars need better software to communicate, hey, you're trying to plug an AC charger into a DC only port. Please use an adapter or the correct charging plug for that application. I think it's going to confuse people. I think it's going to be really kind of frustrating. So those are some of my viewpoints on this transition. There are automakers out there that are clearly getting it correct. Mercedes has updated their cars after the very early CLAs come to do AC and DC on the NACS side. I think that's very smart. Rivian obviously does a great job with their NACS implementation. Tesla, of course, is doing it just fine. But the cars that the automakers that think they're supporting the North American market appropriately, maybe from the outside, from Germany or other places, looking in, thinking, oh yeah, you know what, we'll give you the NACS charging port. They're not understanding the full benefit of AC and DC going through the same port, which means no matter what plug you find anywhere, you can get energy into the car. That is simple. That is easy. That is the way it should be. And I really think this madness has to stop. It's a customer education topic that it's another confusing thing with driving electric. And my impression is they almost should have left these cars CCS instead of doing it this way. Because at least with CCS, you can just use a DC adapter, use NACS stations, and that makes more sense to me in this transition. So if you're going to transition to NACS, make sure you can do AC and DC. If you can't do both on the same lines yet, keep it CCS. And yes, I know someone will be in the comments saying, if only America supported CCS too, this would never have happened. I agree. That's a topic for another day. So thanks so much for watching another Out of Spec Bits YouTube video. This is a rant I've been wanting to make for a while. Hopefully you guys will agree. And if not, can't wait to read your comments to see why you think this is a better solution for the end customer, because to me, it adds more confusion. Thanks for watching. See you in another one again soon. Bye-bye.